under fire in recent weeks from officials in the United States and Europe who say that they're damaging an already bad situation. I'm talking, of course, about the debt crisis on both sides of the Atlantic. Just to remind you who our guests are tonight. In New York tonight, we're joined by David Widener. He's a journalist at the Wall Street Journal. Here in the studio with me is Sarah Bertin. She's from Société Générale and a former analyst at Moody's. Philippe Darvizonnet is an associate professor of economics at Paris University. And Jean-Michel Six is the chief of European economy at the ratings agency Standard & Poor's. Many thanks to you all for being with us tonight. Now, we were talking before the break about Europe. Philippe, I want to get your view on this. Are European officials right to blame the ratings agencies for exacerbating the situation in Europe?
I think you should put some water in the wine regarding this issue. Obviously, you can find periods during which politicians use agencies as scapegoats. They had a good, it was easy for them to do that because rating agencies have been batched a lot following the subprime crisis, etc. So that's not the issue. But there is an increase in debt in Greece, so it's because of the rating agencies. We heard about that. So let's create a public rating agencies which will be devoted to give ratings to public paper. How credible would that be? So on the one hand, I mean, these things are exaggerated because,
it can only say good things.
You don't kill the messenger, in other words. The thing which is important is not what the agencies are doing. You can say they are doing their work properly. Okay. The important thing is, as you said earlier, is the power that has been given to them through the thing that this kind of institution should be forbidden to hold something below AA+, for instance. So when there is an expectation that a rating agency will downgrade, right or wrong, never mind, if you believe in it, you sell the paper, the spread is going up, interest rates go up, maybe the situation becomes unsustainable because rates are too high, then maybe the rating agency will downgrade because rightly it's not sustainable. So you have a risk of the rating agencies not in triggering, but in participating to some kind of self-fulfilling story.
Right. Let's remind ourselves of what Barroso said, actually, because we have got a graphic of what he said. Can we bring that up? Have a look at what Barroso said, because I want to point out his comments. It's quite strange that the market is almost dominated by only 3 players, and it seems strange that there is not a single rating agency coming from Europe. Now, that's not strictly true, is it? Because Fitch is partly French-owned. But there seems to be comments here in Europe, and the German Foreign Minister Wolfgang Schäuble as well, saying, look, we're under attack from American ratings agencies and they're damaging our economy.
It is true that even if Fitch is owned by Fimelac, which is a French holding, at the end of the road, when you look at it, rating agencies started to be regulated by the SEC. It is a fact.
By the
SEC. By the Security and Exchange Commission
the SEC, right.
in the US. So de facto, even if one of them is European, you have the feeling, and the main regulator of rating agencies in the world is the SEC. So it's true that if you think about it, the ECB or a corporation in India will see its rating depending on 3 agencies regulated by an American regulatory agency. It is true. Now, I'm not quite sure that having a European rating agency will change the debate or not. It's more the importance of ratings are. And if you think about it, if I may, the bond market, especially for sovereign, is a market of specialists. It's not my grandmother and your neighbor buying bonds. That doesn't exist
anymore. It's not pension
anymore.
funds and things that ordinary people invest in.
Those people should be able to assess risk on sovereign such as Greece, Portugal, the UK, or the US by themselves. I don't really think they need the rating of rating agency to have an assessment of the risk on the sovereign bonds. We are not 30 years ago, where
But it makes it more expensive for these governments to borrow money on the international markets, doesn't it? If I understand it correctly, once there's a downgrade or even a threat of a downgrade, it becomes more expensive for Spain and Italy, which is what we're seeing now, and Greece and Portugal and all these countries, to actually borrow money to
sometimes yes, sometimes
get their economy
no.
back on
Look
track.
in the US.
Okay.
They have a negative outlook. It didn't change the price of their debt.
Yes.
Look,
But in Europe-
Greece, it does. But we are not talking
And
about
Italy
this-
and Spain.
Yeah, okay. Greece is a very specific market, but you will know that better than I do, because it's a small amount of debt.
Okay.
It's big for Greece, but it's small.
Jean-Michel, sorry to interrupt. Jean-Michel, I just want to ask you what you think about EU Commissioner Michel Barnier. He's come up with these plans that he wants drafted into law in the autumn. One of those laws being that he wants ratings agencies to be forced to have to give a country 3 days' notice before a downgrade or a credit warning or anything like that. How would that affect how you do your job?
There was a request for comments on the markets after that proposal, and I think there was a very vigorous rejections by all market players. I'm not talking rating agencies, I'm talking banks, I'm talking insurance companies, etc. That 3 days opens the Pandora's box as far as leaks and insider tradings is concerned. This would be very dangerous because it would offer speculation the opportunity to get inside information from not the head of the state, but from members of that country, let's say. 3 days is ludicrous. A few quick points on what was just said. First of all, yes, when you are downgraded, it often happens that you are going to pay more on the market. That's precisely why you want a rating, because that is often an opportunity to get the best rate, the best yield that you can get on the markets. The same applies for companies. It is often surprising to listen to governments saying, if I'm downgraded, I'm going to have to pay more. Yes, guess what? Companies are exactly in the same position because they are operating on the same markets. The bond markets are the same for sovereigns, for corporates, for insurers. They compete on those markets. And that's why ratings play a role. So you can't say, well, because I am a sovereign, I'm not going to be following the same rules. I need to have access to cheap funds. Tough luck. That's not going to happen.
You're not creditworthy, whether you're a company or a government.
That's exactly right. On the regulation, quick point. Yes, initially, the first regulations came from the SEC. Today, we are heavily regulated in Europe by ESMA, the European Securities Markets Association, in France by the IMF, and those regulations, believe me, are today extremely heavy. So the time when this was a purely US regulated environment is no longer true. And finally, we have an agency today that is not US, that is not European. It's called Dagong. It's a Chinese
Chinese
agency.
rating agency.
They've
right.
downgraded the US yesterday, and they have now, for the US, they have the same rating as for Russia. Okay? So the same level. And they have very low ratings, much lower than we do for most European sovereigns. So you already have that. If you want to have one more,
Okay.
that's
There
absolutely
is
fine.
another
Sorry,
one, DBRS, which
And
is Canadian. But when DBRS got, and that's very recent, the right to be a rating agency, that was given to DBRS by the ECC. Dagon is different because it's in Asia. But DBRS was clear to be a rating agency by the ECC, even if, indeed, I agree, there is regulation in Europe.
Where were the ratings agencies in 2007, 2008? Why did Lehman Brothers have a A rating the day before it went bankrupt?
Because we thought, well, this is a long discussion, but we thought, and I'm not an expert on the US banking, but
And it wasn't just your rating agencies, it was all of them, to be fair.
that's right. But that's a partial excuse. Because I think the assumption was that the sovereign would provide support to that particular entity because it would have been regarded as systemically important. That was not the decision made by Secretary Paulson at the time.
All right, and do you want to come in on that in New York, David?
Well, yeah, there's been a lot of points made, so I'll just try to go over a couple of them. First of all, the problem with the ratings agencies is that they are a for-profit cartel. And so what that means is coming out of the financial crisis with the reputation and their profit models in jeopardy, they've decided or seen an opportunity where they can bully nations and get involved in the process. And S&P, more than any of them, has been involved in the process of setting ratings and being involved in politics and the global finance and sovereign debt. And so they are maximizing, they are walking around bullying Europe to prove their value and prove their worth. Because there is a vacuum out there that they're able to come in and fill the void. We didn't fix this from a political and government regulatory standpoint. We didn't create anything new. The model is broken. So what's happening is that, yeah, you're getting countries like Portugal that are getting punished for really no reason. And the fact is that S&P, Moody's, Fitch are all aware of what they're doing. It came to the U.S. and tried to do the same thing, and with our debt crisis, and they didn't get it, and it didn't have the effect that they I think they hoped it would. And the reality is now they've got egg on their face, and they're trying to back. So there you have it.
All right.
Just a quick word to say
Yes.
that I vigorously disagree with the word bullying that was used by that gentleman. I mean, we're not bullying anybody. And we did not come to the U.S., as he just said, with a view to have the same practice of bullying anybody. We've been in the U.S. And for over 150 years now. And that's where we started, rating railways. And I have to really vigorously contest that term bullying. This is, we're not on Fox News here. I mean, let's not talk easy.
Okay, all right. And there is an argument, isn't there, that the ratings agencies let people let people know what's going on when governments might not, because the ratings agency don't have so much at stake. What do you think about that argument?
Well, they have a reputation at stake to begin with. I would say I'm not totally agreeing with what has just been said regarding Portugal, as Jean-Michel underlined. It's not Portugal which has been accused when they presented their consolidation program. It's the fact that other European governments decided somewhere in Deauville that the private sector should be involved. That's it. So it has not anything to do directly, at least, with Portugal. It's the mess with European governments.
Just one question. The fact that the private sector has to be or not be involved. When you read the paper by Rogoff and Reinhardt, 600 years of sovereign default, 600 years of the private sector being involved in the case of sovereign default. I had the feeling that the market now believes that sovereign is risk-free. No, bonds are not risk-free.
That's what they were told.
Whatever, but sovereign is not risk-free. Investment is
I
not.
should tell them vigorously until the day before, we will not have any sort of default in Europe. And this was said time and again.
No, if you read,
And
the
after all,
discussion
it is-
has been going on
it
for
is
a long
opin-
time.
it is
Merkel
opinion,
has
isn't
been
it?
going for
Sarah,
the
it is-
participation
That's
since the beginning.
That's
The
recent.
rating agencies
It does.
release opinions, don't they? Investors, it's not set in stone.
So you can say it's opinion. No, the truth is, you're right. Merkel insisted on that. When I say it's recent, it depends on your definition of recent. For years and years, it has been said to this so-called private sector, guys, take government paper, it is risk-free. Look at regulation, the Basel II, 3, etc. It has been said,
it was
guys,
said
there's no
until
risk
Greece?
with these.
And that's been the case until Greece? Or
Yeah, that's why I said it's recent.
But how,
because
I'm
presumably
not an
Wall
inv-
Street banks used to be gold-plated as well.
I
and
know,
that-
You have
I'm not-
plenty of people. You have banks, you have insurance companies, you have mutual funds invested in bonds, you have pensions in some countries.
But don't you think it's a story that keeps coming up in history? You had wave of sovereign default in history. When people bought Argentina paper before Argentina started its downfall, they were believing it was far less risky than it was. We had, default in the 16th century, in the 17th century, in the 18th century. There is nothing new. You know, sovereign do default. Sovereign paper is risky. Period.
And so we're not seeing anything new here. It's just we're seeing it a lot more frequently and a lot more often.
Except let's not be surprised markets buy less and less of them based on your statement. In other words, until
That's why everyone's buying
the
gold.
until the Brussels agreement, there was really a strong belief, especially on emerging markets, because those are the guys that are buying that paper, that the EMU, the European Monetary Union, was such a strong club, was such a strong union, that none of its members presented any significant risk. And when we started to, just to give you an example, we started to downgrade Greece in 2004. The maximum rating that it got at the time was single A, and then it went down from there. But if you look at the spreads, the gentleman was talking about the spreads. If you look at the spreads on Greece between 2004 and 2008, rating actions did not have any impact whatsoever on those ratings. Why? Because investors were thinking, yeah, okay, they're downgrading Greece, but that's part of the Eurozone. That country is part of the Eurozone. It's a zero risk country, regardless of what the rating agencies are saying. This is EMU. This is strong. Then we had the realization, really last month, against the word of the ECB. The ECB was vigorously against it, that in fact you can default in EMU.
The realization last month, and the problem with EMU is not private sector versus non-private sector, and I do believe you will agree. There is a certain amount of sovereign debt in the world which is very, very high. Period. You know, it's 57% of the world GDP, sovereign debt right now. Most of it being the countries of the OECD. You have the US, you have Germany, which has a huge volume of debt. You have Italy, you have Japan, 180% of GDP. You have Greece. How overall that amount of debt is going to be refinanced? And that, whatever you say about rating agency, and I used to work at a rating agency, is something that we should have realized 5, 6, 7 years ago, that the overall amount of debt in the world was going to get difficult to refinance at some point or another.
Although it's not that it's difficult to refinance, because in fact there's still a lot of liquidity in the market, but the competition among issuers is getting much tougher. In other words, there's always money. The price is going to be the issue. You know?
But the price, interest rates are among the lowest in history. The average interest price for sovereign, average interest price rate for sovereign over 100 years is 6%.
All right, just in 10 seconds, because we're running out of time. Do you feel like you're being scapegoated at the moment as a ratings agency?
At times we have a bit of that feeling, yes.
Okay. All right, we're going to leave it there. Jean-Michel Sic, Sarah Bertin, Philippe Darbouzonnet and David Meidner as well in New York. Thank you very much indeed to all my guests tonight. And thanks to you for watching. We've run out of time, unfortunately. Business is next. Don't go away.